The possibility that Assassin's Creed Origins will be the next AAA title to fall victim to single-player loot boxes is making waves across the internet. I talked about this in one of my previous videos, but for those who missed it, gameplay footage by YouTuber CenterStrain01 showed the player browsing through a shop called Nomad's Bazaar, and among the listed items was something called Heka Chest. The item's description states, contains one random weapon or shield, opens automatically on purchase. Everything from the item's naming convention to its function seemed to suggest that this is in fact a loot box, raising concerns that it may be tied to microtransactions. After all, single-player loot boxes seems to be the latest trend in AAA titles, so it's not crazy to assume that Ubisoft will follow suit, especially when you consider that microtransactions has been in Assassin's Creed since 3. Now back then, it was only implemented for multiplayer purposes, but they've slowly creeped their way into single player. Granted, the series has never featured paid loot boxes specifically, but after sightings of the Heka Chest, concerns that Origins is headed towards that direction are understandable. Yes, it is true that the footage only lists a price for in-game currency, but we're looking at a pre-release build of the game. Who's to say that a real-world economy system akin to past games with their Helix credits won't be implemented closer to launch? Nothing has been confirmed yet though, so there's still a chance that Ubisoft, against all odds, will do the right thing. To that effect, Assassin's Creed Origins game director Ashraf Ismail provided some reassurances during a recent interview with website Eurogamer. The article begins by clarifying that these chests are only purchasable with in-game currency, and are there for those people who like to play the game naturally and pad out their wallets. Ismail further elaborated with the following statement. He's a very unique shop vendor in the world who sells carbon crystals, which are the rarest item needed for crafting. You can find this stuff in the world, but the idea is that if you have the money, you can just buy stuff from him. Heda also sells a mystery box which can contain any weapon, piece of gear, or item in the game. It's a way for people who hoard lots of money, if you min-max the economy system, to gamble the money and get really unique stuff. You know, this might be the first time I've ever heard a developer call loot boxes for what they really are, gambling. Obviously, if they're only attached to in-game currency, then you're just fake gambling within the confines of a fake virtual world with fake virtual currency, which is ideal. For the record, I actually don't think there's anything wrong with the idea of randomized loot, but it becomes a problem when the concept is exploited through a real-world economy system to take advantage of people's addictive tendencies for additional profit. Once you get real money involved, that's when it becomes greedy, predatory, and straight up a proxy for gambling, at which point it starts to have tangible effects on people's lives and finances. So I'm all for these kinds of loot chests or randomized loot, as long as they are properly and naturally balanced around the game's progression system and are solely tied to in-game currency. A perfect example of this is Horizon Zero Dawn and its treasure boxes. There's no real-world money attached to them. You have to trade materials you find around the world with merchants to get them, and they only offer things like modifications, ammunitions, traps, potions, and things of that nature, useful but not overpowering. Whereas more substantial items like weapons, armor, and things that affect character progression are strictly left for players to discover by naturally playing the game. And that's how you do loot boxes and make it a natural part of game design rather than something artificially thrown in there for greedy exploitation. So hopefully this means that Assassin's Creed Origins is going that route. Moving on, Ismail continued, the reason we did that was because we saw even 2 years ago people playing the game in different ways. There are people who like to go into a military location, infiltrate them, steal the loot and equipment, and hopefully find some unique or legendary gear. Then there was a smaller set of people who would focus almost entirely on the economy, buying and selling stuff to gain as much money as they can. And we felt like, okay, that's a valid way to play the game. It's a part of the RPG aspect. So we'll let them play the economy. So it's one way to be able to purchase or get some of the unique items in the game. Hey, if they implement this in a way that feels natural and balanced, and if they can keep their word that this is solely tied to in-game currency, I'm all for it. It is worth noting, however, that microtransactions won't be completely absent from the game regardless. During their game session, Eurogamer apparently stumbled upon something called the e-store, where players can spend real money to purchase certain items. Now, because the shop's servers weren't online yet, Eurogamer couldn't browse its contents, but apparently the store menu image hinted that it would sell things like season passes and time saver pack options. One of the options that was showcased was a mummy costume for the main character Bayek. Concerned about the implications, Eurogamer inquired about this, and Ismail responded with, "You can get that from playing in the game. Everything that's in the e-store you can get from playing the game. It's just an accelerated way of playing the game." Okay, so that sounds promising, but I do have a few concerns, starting with the fact that I've heard other publishers and developers give an identical justification like this. Remember when Shadow of War developer Bob Roberts said something similar when asked why they implemented loot boxes in the game? He said, "It's there as a player choice. It's there from my perspective for people who are protective of their spare time and scared when a massive game comes along that they're not getting to see the full experience." That's usually the typical response. They always say some bullshit about how it's giving players the choice of accelerating gameplay without affecting game balance or game progression. And yet, Shadow of War's loot boxes still managed to be intrusive due to how the endgame and the requirements of unlocking the true ending were designed around repetitive, tedious busywork that can be mitigated through the purchase of loot boxes, thereby encouraging the purchase of loot boxes. Are they absolutely necessary? No, but they are still there to lure the frustrated, the impatient, and the addicted. Now, as far as Assassin's Creed Origins is concerned, Eurogamer is adamant that Heka chests will only be sold via in-game currency, which is fantastic news. But keep in mind that we still know nothing about the e-store, so we can't say with certainty yet whether microtransactions will end up being intrusive or not. We know that Heka chests are solely tied to in-game currency, but the question still remains, what exactly is Ubisoft selling in the e-store? Will it have its own loot box system separate from the in-game currency only Heka chests? I'm not trying to say that Ismail's reassurances don't stand for anything. All I'm saying is that there's no harm in being cautious and holding off on celebrations until we know for sure that Ubisoft won't introduce any unwelcome surprises once the e-store servers go online. The best case scenario is that we only get non-loot box microtransactions, meaning that those who do indulge in this stuff will at least always know what they're paying for. And if they balance everything just right, those who can't be bothered to acknowledge microtransactions like myself may be able to ignore it and still have a good experience. And that's cool and all, but you know, it's kind of sad to think that we live in a time where just microtransactions without the loot boxes is cause for celebration. I remember there was a time when even the most minor implementation of microtransactions was a major cause for concern, but now it's like people have acknowledged that there is no escaping from them, and we can only hope for the least terrible version of these practices. It's as if we have become so numb to the abuse that we cheer anytime we get a slap on the wrist instead of a punch to the face. A less shitty situation is now considered a good situation, apparently. Regardless, here's hoping that the e-store doesn't ruin what seems to be an optimistic outlook for Assassin's Creed Origins and its Heka chests, and what seems to be a game with a lot of potential. With that, I would like to end this news update and discussion video. Thank you for tuning in. If you found this video useful and enjoy my content, consider supporting me on Patreon, to chat with me on Discord, participate in Q&As, play games with me, get your name in my videos, and much more. All contributions will go towards helping us remain 100% independent. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Yong Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Yong out!